that is related to the botanical aspects of the taxonomical hierarchy. Now, another difficulty in identifying the botanical source is based on the vernacular names. If you are taking any clue from the traditional system of medicines, in India, for example, Ayurveda, Siddha, Yanali, you are not going to find the direct botanical name in the reference. All you have to find is the regional languages or in the vernacular names. Now, what is that vernacular name exactly meaning today in the botanical name? There can be a lot of confusion. One example, two examples are posted up in the slide. One is Brahmi. Now, Brahmi is a word that is you will find in the literatures of Siddha or Ayurveda that has been normally recommended for cognition and memory enhancement. But memory is being documented as two different plant species. One is Bacopa munari and Centellata asiatica. Now, if you go towards northern part of India, Brahmi is considered as Bacopa munari. If you go down south India, you will find Centellata asiatica is considered as Brahmi. Now, if you have a traditional literature which has Brahmi and you are interested in this particular herbal material, or you want to do any herbal research on Brahmi, then there is a confusion like which plant material should you select. And similarly, there is another example for Sangapushpi. There are 4 different botanical climates like Convolvulus, Pluricaulus, Evaluus, Alsinoides, Cliteria, Ternata, then Conspora, Decussata. So such identification confusion can also occur when you choose any literatures that is based on traditional medicines. It is also our responsibility to cross-verify if at all there are different botanical climates. If there are botanical climates, then that has to be charted out based on the literature claim. Like what particular species do they mean by saying Sangapushpi, or what is that species that is being referred as Brahmi in the traditional literatures. So after the taxonomical hierarchy identification and with the botanical source identified, the next step would be authentication of the identified plant material. Now, what is the difference between identification and authentication? Now, identification anybody can do. I can see, you can just go around the road, you see a neem tree, you of course know it is a neem tree because we are aware of trees which is commonly in and around our community. But what is authentication? Authentication is an expert opinion to confirm what exactly the plant is, what exactly plant genus and species and family does it belongs to. So an authentication of an identified plant material is very important because plant materials are having unique physiology and metabolism, which we discussed earlier, and it can be changed in different environmental conditions. So a plant material growing in a favorable condition and a plant growing in the unfavorable condition does not have or need not have same metabolism, and thereby the secondary metabolite quantity and quality can be altered. So it is better to identify the plant with an expert. The most preferred way to do was like we can get it authenticated from Botanical Survey of India, which is referred as BSI. If you can send the plant material, they will compare with the material available in their museum, and they can issue a certificate that the plant material that you have submitted for identification belongs to such a species, and they will issue a certificate. If that is possible, not possible, to a minimum, what we can do is you can get it certified from a taxonomist or a field botanist, whereby you can confirm the exact identity of the plant material. The one more reason.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah. Shall I proceed?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Or you can get it from a field botanist. There are also other reasons, like there can be any genotype of the plant, or it can be a phenotype of the plant, but morphologically it can look same. So it is better to have an expert opinion of the collected or identified plant material. And apart from this, before you start your research work on any plant material, it is better to maintain a herbarium specimen of the plant material for further reference. Why it's so necessary? if you land up in a different genotype of a particular subspecies, or you land up with a chemotype of a species, the metabolism of this particular material that you have collected is going to be unique rather than the material of the same species in different geographical source. So you may get an activity of the biological source, maybe you collect a different material from a different source, it may not reflect the same biological activity. So herbarium specimen maintenance is of importance for further reference. Now, coming to collection. Once you have identified it, you have got it authenticated from an expertise, now it's the stage to start collecting the materials. Now, geographical source of a particular herbal material is so important because, as I told you, the environment can alter the physiology of the plant. And it is altered, there can be changes in the metabolism. For example, it is called chemotypes. Now, chemotypes are subspecies of the plant where they produce different type of chemical constituent which is not normally present in the particular species. So it means it can produce 1 or 2 secondary metabolites more than its own species. And if you're selecting a chemotype, then these compounds can be of toxic effect. So this particular plant material will give you toxic effect in your biological study, whereas the particular genus, which is not the chemotype, may not be toxic. It's also referred as chemover, meaning that the chemical constant variation. That is what it is referred as chemover. So collection, if you have, based on the literature, if you are following any scientific literatures, you can go for the same geographical source where the particular author or the researcher who have already performed it collected, you can collect it from the same material to have a reproducible effect. Or if you're collecting from a new geographical source, then document the geographical source and also keep a herbarium as a specimen for further reference. Now, next to the nature of the material. Now, this is most important, whether you are doing any studies based on the traditional literature or on any scientific reports. Now, the material that they have used has to be exactly replicated. Even if it's a preliminary report, if they are performed any experiment on the fresh, then the research has to be again, or the material has to be again carried out for fresh materials, or it is dried, or if it is a process, maybe the material is added with water, boiled and filtered, and that if it is your material to be studied, then it has to be exactly replicated. Because before performing the phytochemical studies and or the biological study, we are not aware of what kind of chemical constituents we are going to lose if you choose a different nature of the material. If you are using a dried material in case of fresh, maybe they are interested in a volatile constituent, so they don't want the material to be dried. Or if drain material used, if you are going for fresh, maybe on drying there can be some chemical alteration that is taking place, which we might miss in the further studies. Now, another one more important point in collection is appropriate season and time of collection. As we discussed earlier, that and based on environment, every plant has a specific physiology and metabolism. Now, just like what we can compare to animal kingdom is, if the human body can secrete gastric juice when we start eating, right? The brain stimulates the stimulation of gastric juices, right? So it is our own physiology. So if you compare that to the animal physiology, the plant physiology, every plant has its own physiological system and where to produce a particular metabolite and when to produce it. They have their own cycle of secondary metabolism. So as a researcher, we should be aware of what particular plant part are we collecting and what particular chemical constituents are being point of your interest. If you know that, then you can go for some metabolic studies, or you can do some literature based on metabolic studies, that which season or which time of a day, whether it is in the presence of sunlight or dark, where the particular plant is producing that particular targeted secondary metabolites. If the plant is producing, say for example, alkaloids during the evening hours, if the leaves are being collected in the morning, you'll end up with no alkaloid being produced in the leaf, and ultimately we are not going to have any biological activity. And this is one of the major reason that most of the herbal materials are okay, see like we fail in the preclinical or animal studies. So this is a very important step in the collection aspects to have some kind of idea of the plant material that you are using and their biometric pathways. When a particular chemical constituent is synthesized, there might be plants that there are also opportunity to the particular secondary metabolite may be produced throughout the year, throughout different phases of the plant. Right? It is also, like, we cannot say like it is not possible, but similarly, it is equally also possible that they may produce certain secondary metabolites only in certain phase of their lifetime. Certain maybe a young leaf is going to produce, or the mature leaf may not produce, or certain plant species a secondary metabolite may be triggered only in the mature leaf. So based on our interest, we should know what is the exact time of collection should be. And the last one in this collection is storage. Now, as much as important the time of collection is, storage is also as much of important. The main thing is to avoid any microbial contamination. That's why most of the herbal materials, if you see, they are mostly dried so that there is absence of moisture, because presence of moisture is an invitation to any microbial contamination. If that is not be properly taken care, what can happen is the powder material can get normally attacked by any fungal. It's the most common fungal contamination that happens with dry powders even because of the moisture in the atmosphere. So if it is a powdered drug, you'll not be able to hardly identify the fungal growth if it is of almost brown color in the bark or root powder. And you can take that as a sample. So basically, if you go for any extraction of that, we are not basically extracting the plant material. We are basically working on a fungal extraction. You may get activity, you may not get activity sometimes. Right? So, but does not indicate that the actual potential of the herbal material, because storage was not proper. So this all steps is like as a teamwork. If you have a very good collection from a specific geographical source where it has been already reported, you're exactly following the literature of what the nature of the material is, you know how when to collect and how to collect. But if the storage is not proper, then the material may give sometimes activities. Then it might be not because of the herbal chemical constituents. It can be because of the bacterial infection or fungal or any other contamination. Similarly, it may not give you because the chemical constituents is being degraded by the fungal or the microbes. You can land up either of the ways. Now, after we finish with the collection, once you have the material on hand, what we can do is we can estimate the quality control parameters. There are specific guidelines from WHO. So these are like procedures which we normally can follow, and for different samples, different official limits is being given. So we can perform the quality control parameters and we can see if our collected material is within the quality standards. So I'll just read out some of the common quality control tests that is being recommended by WHO, like determination of foreign matter, microscopy, that is morphology and microscopic examination, a TLC study, determination of ash, determination of extractable matter, determination of moisture or water and volatile matter content, determination of volatile oil, determination of bitterness value, determination of hemolytic activity, determination of tannins, determination of swelling index, foaming index, and determination of pesticide residues, determination of heavy metals like arsenic and toxic metals presence. This is because of the heavy use of pesticides. Then determination of microorganisms or any fungal toxin that is referred as aflatoxins. And there is one more study that has also been recommended, that is determination of radioactive contamination. So these all can be performed on the collected herbal material to just make sure if the parameters of different tests are within the official limits. Now, Coming to the phytochemical studies. So now you have the material, it has passed your quality control test. Now the material is ready for phytochemical studies. Now we are aware that we are going to extract the chemical constituents out of the plant material. Then we can do a fractionation. Fractionation is further separation from the extract. It is a fraction from the extract which will contain lesser number of chemical constituent than the extraction. Then we can go to isolation, where you are going to pick up a particular single molecule out of the fraction or directly from an extract, which can be characterized by using different spectroscopic studies like IR, NMR, and MAS. Now these are the pathways that we can perform a phytochemical studies. Now coming to extraction, I'll just go a little detail about the four of the aspects. Now crude extraction is nothing but like, if you have no idea about the different chemical constituent, you can go for crude extract. So which means basically it is an alcohol extraction, whether you are preferring ethanol or methanol. If you have no idea about what is the chemical constant present, you can go for a crude extract. Then from crude extract, you can again further fractionate it with other organic solvents, or you can go for successive solvent extraction. If as a researcher you're interested, I want every chemical constant that is present in the herbal material to be out in the extract, you can do a successive solvent extraction, which implies you start with the non-polar solvent, extract the material, filter it out, collect the extract, then to the same material add another solvent which is lesser non-polar, and then again lesser non-polar, you can come to moderately non-polar, then you can go to moderately polar, until you can go to the last as a polar solvent, preferably water as the last of the successive solvent, so that ensuring that whatever the chemical constant present in the material, whether you are of polar nature or non-polar nature, would have dissolved in any of this solvent which you have used successfully for the same material. Or you can also go for a specific solvent extract if it is based on the literature. If you are already, there is a preliminary studies available, somebody has reported an activity on chloroform extract or a methanol extract, you can directly go for the methanol extract, because you want to further go into the research, you can then replicate the other process, forgetting about the other crude extracts. Now coming to fractionation, all the three, whatever the crude extract or successive solvent extract, specific solvent extraction, can be fractionated. For example, like you are going for a crude extract like methanol extract, you can fractionate with again another group of organic solvent which is like immiscible. So we can call them as chloroform fraction of methanol extract. This is specifically suitable for a crude extract, because when you use alcohol as a crude extraction, it will dissolve even non-polar to the polar chemical constituents. So it will be a large group of chemical constituent in the methanol extract. That is why you are also preparing it as a crude extract. Now to remove again the non-polar constituent, you can make a fraction of a non-polar solvent from the methanol extract. Say for example, an N-hexane or a petroleum ether. So the methanol extract can be dried and it can be extracted with petroleum ether, giving you a petroleum ether fraction of methanol extract. So what has happened? From the crude extract, you have narrowed down to a few number of chemical constituents in the fraction. Now the third one is isolation. Now isolation, we can directly do it from the crude extract, or from the extract you make into a fraction, and the fraction can be targeted for isolation. Now generally used techniques are column chromatography, we can use flash chromatography, or we can go for preparative TLC, or you can optimize a chemical process where you can isolate a particular molecule directly from even a crude extract. Now these days we also have preparative LC methods possible. So once you isolate this chemical constituent, then we can go for spectroscopy studies, find out the IR, NMR, mass, put all to the molecular structure together. So you have one new isolated chemical constituent from your extract. Now, going to the last phase, the biological studies. All traditional claims are based on clinical outcomes. When you are planning for a herbal research, if you are taking traditional claim, the researcher should be aware that all the traditional claim are basically an outcome of clinical studies. any traditional medicine, where any place, any geographical or any country, they're all clinical outcomes. Nobody 1,000 years back did any rat studies or rabbit studies. They were all basically trial and error of a clinical studies. They were all studied on patients, some on healthy people, and the outcome was either orally translated or it was documented. So if you're going for a traditional claim, if you taking the sample as exactly just in the traditional claim, if you are doing an animal study, it will be one step backwards rather than going one step forwards. If you are working on herbal drugs, yes, you can go for clinical studies because you are found a new combination which is not reported in any of the traditional literature. So we have to take safety issues in the hand. So we can follow the path of a drug discovery pathway. You have to do a toxicity studies, establish the safety measures of and the toxicity level. Then you can do a preclinical studies. If the biological response are good enough, we can do a clinical studies. If it is any Ayurvedic drug which has been already in use or which has been previously used, then taking that sample and studying it on animals may end up most of the time will not give you the activity because the particular mechanism or the enzyme, the hormone that the preparation adds on may not be in parallel with the animal when you compare it to a human being. And this is one of the major reasons that most of the herbal materials fail, because we take the clue from the traditional medicines instead of going one step ahead of doing much more specific clinical studies. We go one step back and perform animal studies. If your target is like a new combination, then again you can go with a similar pattern of doing a toxicity study, preclinical and clinical. That will be most suitable. And the third one which you are seeing on the slide is the bioactivity guided isolation. This can be the most preferred pathway of any herbal drug approach, where you are going to take some extract, whether it's a crude or successive or maybe a specific solvent extract that can be preliminarily or a benchtop screened by a particular bioactivity method for which you are intended for the therapeutic activity. Say, for example, if you are interested in diabetic studies, you can take the extract and do a preliminary screening with a few number of preclinical or the animal studies to find out if the particular extract is bioactive. Thereby, you are confirming that your extract is biologically active. Then the extract can be fractionated into different fractions as we discussed in the previous slides. And this fraction can be again screened for biological activity to find out which of the fraction is having or carrying out the biological activity, which is potential. Sometimes you may find as one fraction or sometimes you may find as two fractions also. Now, based on this bioactivity guided fractionation, you can target of isolating certain chemical constituents because now we are very sure that the extract is active. Now we are narrowed down them to fraction, which has also been screened biologically. So this particular fraction may contain some individual chemical constituents which may be potent or biologically active. Now that will be a targeted isolation. Now that isolated compound again can be screened preclinically. If it is potent enough, you can go for a clinical studies. It means at the end of the day, you have a very good potent drug molecule in your hand. So I'll just wrap up in 2 minutes. This is the last slide. So what are the current issues in the herbal research? Why do you find it so much difficult to put a herbal based or a natural product based drug in the market? Because of the poor research plan. People into herbal research have no detailed understanding about what we discussed today, about how to explore. So they make mistakes in the identification aspects, they choose the wrong nature of the material, they collect it at the wrong time. Right? So based on this, they may end up in very superficial studies. They may take one plant extract, they may do it for which is already being clinically used. They may do an animal studies and they do a publication which says this particular extract is not active in rat or mice. Right? So by what happens slowly, the literatures have become so much dilute that any any activity today, even a disease which has been recently identified, if you put it on Google Scholar, you may find some plant has been given activity for that particular disease. Now, whether exactly does it exhibit the therapeutic potential of the herbal drug, we are not aware. But by doing this literature, what has happened, it is blocking another potential herbal researcher to choose that particular material as a sample for further study. So it is better even during the literature survey to confirm whether the reported literature or the literature that you are collecting as a base for your further work is very authentic. Or you can do a very preliminary pilot screening to check if the biologically activity exists. If it exists, then we can start with the research design. So as per our research group, we always believe that to study one plant, it will require more than a lifetime of work. So we've been working on plant, the Clearonium flamidus, which I flashed a slide initially where we have identified adrenaline. We've been working in the last 15 years in the same plant. So we have now substantial evidence and data about what is the physiology that metabolites present in this particular plant species rather than taking another plant material and diluting the literatures. I hope you have thoroughly enjoyed this journey with me. Thank you so much for your patience listening. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Doctor. Really, we enjoyed everything. It's a very beautiful presentations, and it contains a lot of knowledge sharing from you. Actually, it is a protocol for studies,
Almost.
characterization studies for in phytochemicals.
Yes, almost a protocol type.
Yeah, it's very, very beautiful because it's not easy to derive a protocol in plant science. You know that.
Yes.
It's very difficult. Everybody take it is as a easy research area, but it is really very difficult to carry out research in plant phytochemicals and their characterizations. So
yes, they are very much diversified.
Yeah, thank you very much, Doctor, for these wonderful presentations. Now this is the time for candidates to ask your questions to Dr. Mohan Margaraja. He is expertised in plant. Okay, it's a clear knowledge in pharmacognosy. So you ask questions to him. Anyone wants to ask question, you just raise your hands. Prashna Srinivasan, now you shoot your question.
Yeah.
Sir, good evening, sir. This is Prasanna.
Ha, Prasanna.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I would like to ask your view on. So, some Western country researchers are claiming that our Ayurveda and Unani things are as a complementary and alternative medicine. What is your views on that, sir? Whether it is, we can call it as a directly medicine as like allopathy or something, or it is only a complementary or alternative medicine, sir, to the existing one?
No, see, because the allopathic or the modern science that we call as allopathy is a main system in Europe. Because they don't have any organized system like us. Of course, they've been using herbal materials and plant materials as drugs, but they don't have an organized system. Organized system means I'm talking about Ayurveda, Siddha. They don't have an organized system. They might have used herbal sources or plant source or an animal source. So then they developed this allopathic as a modern source. So it's a mainstream for them. Just before 200 years, Ayurveda, Siddha was the mainstream for us. Now, just because the advent of the modern science and we wanted much early treatment and cure to be much faster, we have made it into an alternate and a complementary system. So in China, I don't think like Chinese traditional medicine is an alternate system. They have kept it as a main system. Of course, they are practicing allopathy system. It's not like they are not ignoring, but we have slowly ignored our own organized systems. Hence, it has become alternate. Otherwise, it will be mainstream.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thanks for
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your great knowledge with us. Your talk was jam-packed with useful information on herbal drug technology. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.